The member for Mount Pearl South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, certainly a pleasure for me to stand in this Honourable House and speak to Bill 16, an Act to amend the Student Financial Assistance Act. And Mr. Speaker, as has been indicated here by my colleague and other speakers before me, basically what's being done here is they're going to be inserting a paragraph here, 15(1)(f) of the Student Financial Assistance Act. That is actually going to be repealed, sorry, and it's going to be substituted with another section here. And the other section that's going to be put in here is basically going to allow that if a student has a student loan, then, or should I say, if a student receives a student loan and they receive, I guess, more money than they would otherwise be entitled to, I guess there's a number of reasons why that could happen. I guess there's a number of reasons how that could happen. But if that were to happen, that we have the ability to take that grant money, that additional grant money that that student received, that they would now owe, we would turn it into a student loan, so that the province certainly could recover its funds, and hopefully that could go back into post-secondary education. And Mr. Speaker, I think that that's a positive thing. I think that everybody on this side of the House, certainly here in the official opposition, would view that as positive. I believe the third party, I won't speak for them, they can certainly speak for themselves, but I believe they would view that as a positive move as well, as I'm sure the government does, and that's why they're bringing forth this particular bill. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, anything that we can do to improve post-secondary education in this province, I think it's incumbent upon us to do just that. And certainly we have some great learning institutions here in Newfoundland and Labrador that this would apply to. We certainly have students who are attending Memorial University, and this is certainly a positive thing for them. I think it's positive in terms of we have a combination of low education costs. I believe we're the lowest in the country now, even ahead of Quebec. At one point in time, I believe Quebec was actually ahead of us. I think we may be ahead of them, but if not, we're pretty close. We're on par with them. And now to have a situation where we are going from student loans to a grant-based system, I think that's a positive thing. That was certainly a positive move in this budget, and certainly something that we would support over on this side of the House of Assembly. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, you know, this is something that's going to apply to Memorial University, something that's going to apply to Grenfell College in Corner Brook, which would be part of the university system. Certainly something that's going to apply to the Marine Institute and the students who are seeking their higher education at that particular educational institute. It's going to apply to College of the North Atlantic, and of course there's a number of campuses all across the island, and we have students who would avail of these grants, and of course whereby this provision could apply on any of them throughout the island. So, Mr. Speaker, I think, you know, based on that, based on the students who are going to utilize that, I think we would all agree that, you know, next to healthcare, certainly when we talk about the priorities of government, which should be the priorities, reflect the priorities of society, I think that we would all generally speaking, when we talk about those priorities, we talk about healthcare, usually as the #1 priority. We talk about education, is usually a very close second. Because it's very important that if we are to succeed as a province, if we are to advance as a province, then we need to ensure that our population is well educated. We need to ensure that our children receive quality education, both in the elementary and high school system, and certainly in post-secondary, where this piece of legislation applies. I would be remiss if I didn't echo, though, some of the concerns that my colleague did raise in terms of, you know, our K to kindergarten to level 3 system, and certainly the concerns we have
Order,
with
please.
that.
Order, please. I would ask the member to make his comments relevant to the bill regarding student grants, student loans.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll certainly do that. So again, just keeping on the post-secondary side, Mr. Speaker, you know, as I said, there are many students in our province that will avail of this at the many institutions, and you know, we see it's important, as I said, to educate our own. Like we talk about, for example, physicians and the need for physicians and to retain physicians here in this province. And it's a much better chance of that happening when they actually go to school here at our medical school, our own homegrown physicians, and to have a program such as this, to have a grants-based program along with the low tuition fees. I think that that's something that will hopefully attract and keep our own children here in our medical school. And as I said, if we have them here and at our own medical school, there's a good chance we're going to keep them here to serve the people of Newfoundland and Labrador in both the urban areas and in the rural areas. Many other programs, Mr. Speaker, we look at our economy and we're trying to diversify our economy, and you know, we have a need for so many skill sets here in this province, and many of them will come through Memorial University, whether that be children who are graduating, for example, in the business program, Mr. Speaker, whether it be our nursing program, and certainly, you know, at MUN we have a Bachelor of Nursing program. We used to have an RN system, now we have a BN system and so on, and Masters in Nursing and so on. And that's all done through Memorial University, and certainly these particular grants would apply to them. We actually now have our own police officers, our RNC officers, which at one point in time were going through Holland College in Prince Edward Island, and now, of course, our police officers are actually going through Memorial University, and having this grant system here would certainly apply to them. Mr. Speaker, you know, we talk about social workers and our social work program and all the students who would go through that, and we certainly would have a need for social workers, Mr. Speaker, and certainly this grants program would apply to them. And then we look at things, Mr. Speaker, like you know, the oceanography, and there's so much stuff. I mean, we do live on an island. We're out in the middle of the North Atlantic, and certainly we're seeing a lot of programs now that are being taught at the Marine Institute, and the Marine Institute is certainly becoming a center of excellence in ocean technology and ice and all those types of things, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, when we talk about all those programs and the need to have our own children as well as having people from around the world, quite frankly, and the country and the world coming here to this Centre of Excellence, well, by having a low tuition rates, or I should say competitive tuition rates, in terms of having this grant-based system to which this piece of legislation would apply, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, we talk about that, and as I said, particularly our own students, Mr. Speaker, which are availing of this. I think that's an important thing, and this certainly would apply to them. And Mr. Speaker, then we look at the skilled trades. We look at we look at the skilled trades, Mr. Speaker, and you know, Mr. Speaker, we have a need for many students to go through the skilled trades program. We look at our offshore. We look at the need for people who would be involved in, for example, students to which this would apply. We look at students, Mr. Speaker, that would be pipe fitters. We look at students perhaps who would be doing welding. We look at students who would do plumbing. We look at students who would be involved in carpentry. We look at students who would be involved in scaffolding and so on through the College of the North Atlantic. And whether that be the College of the North Atlantic, certainly here in St. John's, or whether it be College of the North Atlantic in some of the other locations we have throughout the province, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and there is a need in our province for all those trades. Well, Mr. Speaker, to have a grants-based system for all of those students is a very positive thing, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I guess the bottom line is that we have numerous students here in the province. There's going to be a labor shortage. We've heard there's going to be a labor shortage in the future. We certainly have a lot of the baby boomers are going to be retiring. There's going to be a need for our young people to fill all these jobs, whether they be jobs in the offshore, whether they be jobs in the business sector, whether it be jobs in the medical field, Mr. Speaker, whether it be jobs in the public service, in law enforcement, Mr. Speaker, and so on. All these jobs are coming up. We need to make sure that our young people take advantage of these jobs, that they're properly trained to do these jobs, whether it be, like I said, through College of North Atlantic, Memorial University, Marine Institute, and so on. And so, in order to encourage our young people to avail of all these jobs and to have them trained and to do these programs, we need to ensure that their education and their post-secondary education in particular is affordable, and that we have programs in place to make it affordable for them and their families. Because, you know, quite often we see, you know, students who, you know, who have to pay for these things. Sometimes they have family support. Sometimes they have to pay for these things on their own. Sometimes they come from a family that has the financial means. Sometimes they come from a family that perhaps don't have that financial means, Mr. Speaker. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, we have students who, a lot of students who live in rural Newfoundland and Labrador, and they have to travel to St. John's to avail of their post-secondary education. Not all, but a number of them. Some might go to Grenfell campus, for example, if they're on the West Coast or so on. There's some that maybe would avail of distance education and so on, but a lot of them have to come to town. And when they have to come to town, the costs that they have to incur is not necessarily just tied to tuition, not just tied to books and so on, but sometimes it's tied to having to stay at residence at Memorial University. Sometimes it's, sometimes they have to rent an apartment, and there's a cost to that. And some of them, find themselves in a situation where they're having to go to school, they're having to work to support themselves. Some have family to support them. But the bottom line is, and where I'm coming to with this, is that whichever route they take, anything we can do as legislators, putting programs in place to support them, to make it more affordable for them to avail of their educational opportunities. And we certainly do have a number of educational opportunities available to them here in this province. We're certainly thankful for that. But anything we can do to make it affordable for them, that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. And so when I saw the budget and, realized that we would be moving to a grant system from a student loan system, I think that was something that we were all very pleased to see. I know I spoke to some students in my district, spoke to some other students that were friends of the family and so on, and they were pleased. They were pleased to see that we would have a system in place, a grants-based system, along with the lower tuition fees, to help make their education more affordable for them. They were pleased to see it, their families were pleased to see it, and certainly, as the official opposition, we're pleased to see that happen. So this particular bill, as I indicated earlier, Bill 16, an act to amend the Student Financial Assistance Act, this particular bill is going to tie into that program, and as indicated, should a student who receives this needs-based grant, I guess there could be a variety of reasons why that might happen, how it could accidentally happen, and so on, that it would just simply convert to a student loan. And I think most students would view that as fair. I mean, I think that if, as a province, if we're going to provide local, certainly a lot further beyond where we were a number of years ago, where you had, students graduating and so on, and they had this horrendous debt, a horrendous debt. So after going to Memorial University, or after going to Grenfell College, or after going to the Marine Institute, or after going to College of North Atlantic, and after getting their education, would find themselves, when they now want to start out in life, get a home, get a car, settle down, whatever the case might be, get a job, and so on, that they would have a large debt hanging over their head. So anything that we can do to help remedy that situation, to help move away from that situation, to make it better for our students, our children, our future leaders in this province, Mr. Speaker, anything that we can do in that regard, including the passage of Bill 16, Mr. Speaker, as one member of this House of Assembly, I'm certainly all for it. Thank you.